just gonna need to kind of humor me and just let me go through my little spiel.
Spiel. There, she has a method. Let her go through it.
And then you can have a choice of if you learn a different technique. So the first thing I want you all to do, because we need these to set a while, is to do your bases for the full rows. So you're gonna need to have some little squares. You're gonna need a nail. Secure your paper on the nail. And, okay, I want you all to take a look at that little kiss. We're going to be using a tip number 104 for the roses, for standard size rose. You can find rose tips in a lot of different sizes, but every rose has to have a base, a support on the bottom, so that it has a three-dimensional look and it's not just two-dimensional. That base is really important, and your base needs to be, depending on the tip that you're using, 1.5 the height of the tip. Okay, so you know how big to make the tips. I had a decorator once show me that what she did with her roses, instead of piping more royal icing, she used kisses as the base for her roses, because now there's a little something, a little surprise inside the rose instead of just pure sugar. So I do teach that, and you're not going to see the base, so it really doesn't matter what color, what flavor, it's whatever you want it to be. But you also need to know how to make them from scratch if you don't use the kisses, because sometimes your rose tips are much larger, and that's not going to work with a really large rose tip. So you're going to take a 12 or a 10, and really what you're trying to do is to mimic the same shape and size as you do have here for the kids. So you're going to use that as your kind of visual template, and you're going to bury the tip just to kind of let it furrow out and get really wide at the bottom. Then you're going to slowly come up. Okay? So you're going to make 10 of these little bases. Now, I'm not going to sit here and watch me make 10 of them, but
We could. That'd be fun.
Like a little cone or a volcano.
so you need to do these first, because this is royal icing and you need it to set before you can start putting petals on it, because then when you start, if it's soft, they start to go this way and that way, and it's really hard for you to manage keeping them upright. Now, we're not going to get started immediately with roses, however, so that's something we got to do as preparation for that skill in a little bit. We're going to start off with a blossom. And the blossoms are going to take what number tip?
101.
101. You can also use any of the rose tips. We're doing blossoms because they're supposed to be small. They're 5-petaled. Okay, so you use the template. It says here apple blossom. It's also known, can be used for peach blossoms. Anything that's a 5-petal is considered a blossom. The color is dependent on what type. Apple blossoms are white, and cherry blossoms are pink. Okay, so it's the same technique, only you're going to be changing the color. So you want to do some white ones for apple with a yellow center. You want to do some pink ones for the cherry blossom. Oops, I have the wrong one. Let me put this one here. Now these templates are really nice because you get to see where your divisions are. So everywhere you see a division is where one of your petals needs to go. The thin part of your petal tip is always the petal area where it's going to be nice and thin. You always want to anchor the base of the bottom of your tip to the nail, and you're going to still be at an angle. You're not completely flat, because if you're at a slight angle, your petal will furrow upwards. Now you don't want to be completely perpendicular either, because then you're going to create a cone, and that's not what we're trying to do. You want to create a fan. So you're at slightly at an angle, and you're going to just pivot your nail, and then you're going to stop once you come to that line, and you're going to pull to the center of the template. Then you're going to place your tip back in the middle, but behind the last petal you just did, and pivot again, then stop and pull it again to the center. And you're gonna recreate, you're gonna continue this process until you get all the way around. Now the last petal is the only one that you're gonna have to change your angle upwards so that you don't mess up the petal that you just put down. And this is too much icing for a bag, because you need to be able to control everything. Do you have a container where you keep your white?
Yeah, we have it.
Okay, so don't overfill your bags. You want to have a lot of control when you're doing this. So that same technique, I'll do one more, is what you're going to do for your cherry. So it's just going to change the color. It's not going to change the technique. Okay, that is what you're going to do for your blossom. Now let's go down to pansies. On your pansy template, you'll see that the petals are now divided into two. You've got two petals down here and one large petal at the top. This is actually the bottom petal, and these are the top petals. You're also going to do doubles, which means you're going to do one layer of petals, and then you're going to come back and do a smaller version right on top of those same areas and do doubles. So this actually has 6 petals. Okay. And we're going to go up on our size.
So you go into a 104?
Yes, and actually, I'm not going to use it.
And the blossoms was done with a 102?
Yes. Pansies are nice because they're really easy. You can really put a lot of pressure to get them to unfurl really nicely. They come in a lot of different colors and combinations, so you can get a little bit more creative with them. Same technique for the blossom that we used for the petals is the 2 petals, that the technique we're going to use for these 2 petals. So I'm starting on this side, anchor in the center, and I'm going to squeeze and pivot my nail, come to that line in the center, stop squeezing, pull to the center, again, right there again, pivot, pull to the center. Now the bottom one is where you really get a chance to put a lot of pressure to create that bottom petal. Okay? Now let's do a second layer on this. 2 smaller ones and then another.
So I understand correctly, the bottom layers is gonna be more of a solid color than the second layer for sheet, right?
Not necessarily. Don't follow my colors. Colors can be anything you want.
Okay.
Okay?
Some are double color, some are the same color. Right? Some are like
Yeah.
one color.
Some are solid, some are alternate colors, so whatever you want to do. So right there again in the center, and I'm hovering because I don't want to really dig into it. I'm doing the same thing with the 2 petals, and I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. Really put a lot of pressure into it, and you have your pencil.
Okay, I get you. So it's just one layer and the second layer.
Right. So there's the pencil. Now let's do violets. So since I already have the tip here, what number do we use for the
104.
violet? 101?
Yes.
Okay, violets are going to be very, very small. Do you have any skewers in here by any chance?
Yeah, right here. pen?
No, I got it. I just needed to get some stuff like out of the truck. Normally, it'd be nice to have a little bit of white in there for marbling effect, but violets are solid.
The bottom of the pan, Chef, you just did like 3 little cleans, right?
I just squeeze really, really, really hard. Okay, now let me explain this template. You see the center part of the template?
Yes.
That's how small your pansies need to be.
Okay.
And you see all the dark areas? That's where you should have a gap or blank negative space. So you'll notice that it kind of looks like a little bow tie. One side is larger at the bottom. You have 3 on the bottom and 2 at the top, okay? Too small. Same technique that we used for blossoms. And then we're gonna completely turn the nail all the way around, so now you can do your 3, because you wanna have gaps in here. You don't wanna have them all symmetrical. And these need to be more elongated, so you're gonna move a little forward and then come back. Forward and back. Forward and back. So you have 3 small petals and 2 small petals.
Then we're gonna go back around it. Let me see what petals.
No, that's it.
That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
What?
That
They're
is
tiny.
the violet. Okay? Primrose. Primrose uses a 104. Could also use a 103. Really, any of the petal tips will work fine for a primrose. What number does it tell you? Is it 104 or 103?
104.
104? For primrose? 101 or 102? Okay, let me see.
Well, actually, you're looking at, you wanna look at your little chart.
Yeah, what did I put on the chart? Was it 104 or 10? What's mine? It might be 102.
Primrose, 101, 102.
Okay. So this is a 101. Perfect. Again, the smaller ones means the blossom is going to be smaller. Primrose has 5 divisions, 5 petals, similar to the blossom. Since we're using a smaller tip, the petals are going to be smaller. Now the difference with the petals on this is that we're not just going to pivot the tip, the nail. We're actually going to go upwards and then do an indentation and then come down. We're going to move our tip a little bit in the shape of a heart because these petals have a heart shape to them.
Okay.
Start on one end, come up, dip a little bit, and then come down. So you see that? Looks like a little heart.
So are these, so the primrose is gonna be really small then?
Yes.
Okay.
So in every one of those divisions, your petals need to have a little heart shape to them.
So it'll be a lot of process.
How many petals should we have?
5. Okay, and that's the primrose. That's the difference. Daisies.
It's like,
Okay, so here's your template.
okay.
Lots of little divisions. What is it, 12, 13?
Yes.
12.
12.
Now, here's your white. And the tip number,
101.
10 what?
101 or 102.
The reason why it has such a small tip, now you could use a 104, you could use a larger one, but that means you're gonna need a bigger nail, and you're gonna need a bigger piece of parchment to build it on. Okay, so now you'll see that we have to go all the way to the perimeter of the nail to do a full petal. So what you're gonna do with this tip, and you're gonna be slightly angled, is you're gonna follow the line as you squeeze, and then here you're gonna come across to furl out the edge and then come back down. That's how we're going to make a thin petal. So watch this. Up, turn, and down. Up, furl, and down. I use the nail to pivot when I come to the top of that petal as I'm coming down. I've already lost track of the petals. Okay?
Oh, pretty.
Okay.
Narrow, thin petals.
When should you stop squeezing when you're doing the daisies?
At the when you come down.
When you come down?
Yeah.
Okay.
To the center. Show that one again.
Chef, use like a chef number 1 or 2 for the yellow part. Like
You can do just an open 2 or 3 tip.
2 or 3.
Yeah. Okay, so again, my tip is it's a lot flatter this time because I want my petal to come out more flat, but I am gonna pivot at the top in order to furl out the edge of that petal. So I'm kind of riding that line in between each section. And down. Symmetry with this is always important. So that's why you always have to use your nail, and when you're coming down, always come down to the center. Don't try to do this and have you try to use a direction, because then you're gonna have some petals going this way, some petals going that way. And so you need to use your nail to keep going to the center, center, center. Always look at working on one petal in front of you as you're turning it, so you can keep that symmetry. Okay, of your daisies.
So Chef, are you saying don't turn the bag, turn the nail?
Turn the nail. Okay,
Roses?
those are those. Now let's do our roses. Now,
That's the full rose, correct?
yes,
Okay.
there are a lot of different methods for doing roses. I have my method. It's not
That's
the
crazy.
way, it's a way, but I'll show you my way.
Is there another way to do the daisy that you've done before? No. All craziness.
Okay, so here, I'm gonna try to break this down so that it makes sense to you. This is your first petal. This is the base. And I'll show you what all these mean. Your second layer of petals. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that the height of the first and second layer of petals are all at the same height. Okay? Then the next set of petals that we're going to do is going to be again. I might have to change this as I go along, but we'll see. Okay. Now the next layer of petals, we're gonna come slightly down, and we're gonna be slightly coming out, angling out.
You just build on top of that.
Kind of like a W.
Okay? So that's what I want you to notice. This is a little too high. It needs to be slightly below and slightly angled for the next layer. And then you're gonna keep following that same premise. Slightly below and slightly angled. Slightly below and slightly angled. Okay? So it's better to show you than to strain it. Hang on, let me see if my students need me.
I thought that was you standing in the hallway right there. Look at that. Why are you outside in the hallway? It's right here. She had glasses on.
Careful, there'll be time. Reflections actually where the kids before this.
I don't have my phone, but after she finishes, can we just?
Oh, yeah, you can take pictures of all of it. I'll leave it as is. Need a drink, Chef?
Just a little.
Okay.
See if I can do this so that I can leave you something to look at after. Step one, I'm going to place my tip perpendicular. I'm not going to be angling up or down, this is perpendicular, halfway up the base of the tip, and I'm going to go tightly all the way around and create a very tight cone. That's the first step. This is important because we need to cover that base. We do not want to see that base at all. So that top petal is really important. So I'm going to demonstrate that top petal again.
Don't you just put a layer over it like we did for our pie flowers?
I don't grasp the question or what you're
Don't you
asking.
just build layers over it like we did for our pie flowers?
I wasn't here for your other flowers, so I don't know. Okay, next layers are at the same height. Tip is perpendicular. I am not angling. I'm still straight up and down. It's also important that you start your stroke from the top and go all the way around in an arcing motion. Now, this is important because if you just start short and start building here, this is going to get top heavy and it's going to start to wobble. You need that full stroke in order to support the petals that you're putting down. So you're going to come up perpendicular and down. Three petals, write that down. First step is 1, covers the base. Step 2 does 3, that goes around the base. One petal, and that's step number 1. And this is 3
3.
petals, step number 2. Robert, will you peel another one of these?
I know how to peel one-handed. I'm very sad.
Everybody's gonna give Chef Delafuente a kiss, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pick up on that last.
Sing all the way around. Three.
So I'm back where I started here. The next, now what am I gonna do? And slightly below. So I'm not gonna be up at this height, I'm gonna come down, so I'm only gonna come up this far, and I'm gonna start pulling back so that the petal can start kind of opening up. I'm also going to always begin, you have to be in control of the symmetry of the rows. So you see here, I have a nice rounded area here, but I have a V starting to develop here. This is when you have to kind of control the symmetry, and you need to push the icing up against there to round and give your rose symmetry as you're building it. Because if you just keep going, you'll end up building roses that have a weird shape to them sometimes, okay? So again, slightly behind, slightly angled, coming up, and I'm furling out slightly. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Step number 3 has 5 steps.
You can see it's already starting to look like something. So this is step number 4, and how many?
Number 3.
Oh yeah, step 3. I'm getting all this up. And
same direction all the way around? Okay,
Yeah.
I thought I saw it go back.
Very impressive, I know.
I am very impressed.
No, don't you, I'm rusty at roses, because I don't do roses all the
That's
time.
not rusty, ma'am.
That is not.
Your rusty's still like gone.
Now, the number of petals is not written in stone. If you got larger bases or you're not going as far over, then you can squeeze more in. Just, you gotta keep symmetry in mind. So don't get locked into, oh, I can only have 4 petals here. I can only have 5 petals here. No, you're looking at symmetry. If you need 5 in order to create that symmetry and go all the way around, then do 5. You need to focus on the symmetry. So now again, we're gonna come that slightly down, and we're gonna come up to that same slightly down and slightly angle back again. So from the base up, and you're pushing the icing up against the base. This is so that you can avoid having gaps in your rows. So how many? Did somebody count?
6.
6.
Chef, step 3, the 5 petals, they started
Step 4 is 6.
slightly
About
under the 3.
Yes, slightly below and angle back.
Okay, and then the last set,
That full row.
the 6 that you just did is slightly below the 5.
So that's not a full row?
You can go further though. We're gonna go one more layer. And then I'll show you another trick that you can do. Can somebody cut like a larger square of just parchment? And I'll show you something.
Right behind you, Dan.
Is this okay?
Oh, yeah. That's
Oh. Very large.
okay. Somebody have a pencil, do a template of the base of one of those templates, just mark it on. This is why it's nice to have a nail, so now you can angle things from the back. Yeah. Okay.
That's pretty.
How many was that time?
6.
So that's step 5.
That's 1 full rows, correct?
And 6.
So that was
Alright.
2 6s, right?
Yes, but again, it could be 6 to 7,
Okay.
5 to 6.
3.
Everything.
Okay, what else was I going to tell you about? Oh, the extra little thing you can do. I have a really large nail, really large nail that I usually use for this kind of stuff, but I don't have it
I have
with me.
What number
Do you have a big one?
That mark, what number?
You got a big nail? Grab it real quick.
Oh, that's it.
So, if you don't have a really large nail, to do, and you want to make a fuller rose, there's something you can do. You can go up to one of these stages, and then you can pipe the outer, another layer of outer petals, and then when everything is hard, you pop the ring off, put it, and then put some buttercream, and then pop the other one in the middle, and now you've added on petals that you didn't have room for on a typical nail. They call those cabbage roses. Have you ever seen cabbage roses? They just
Oh, yeah.
petals and petals and petals that go on forever. So that's basically what that is.
Found it.
So you're
You think it's in here somewhere?
piping a big ring, letting that dry, and then attaching one on the flower nail to that one.
And I'm using the nail as the template because you want to use whatever size that you were using for your original flower for the center, because you want to go on the perimeter of that. Because then if you don't make it the right size, it's not going to fit where you need it. Okay, I'm just going to do this here. So you're basically going to be doing like you were petals for your blossoms.
You find it?
Yeah, she got that.
Oh, that is it.
There you go, Chef. Take
Oh,
one.
right.
There you go. Oh.
But realistically, when you're making like a little hyper roses, wouldn't you want the petals to be a little bit more elongated instead of truncated?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's whatever you want it to be, however the look you want. But if you make the petals too large, then it's not gonna be a smooth transition from one size to the next.
Okay.
And it's gonna look odd. So this one now, once it's dry, you can pop it in there and create a bigger looking rose.
Oh, okay.
There's another trick. All those little tricks.
Chef, are there any tricks to getting your oil to dry faster?
No,
No?
ma'am.
Okay.
Just like it.
Next time.
What if we put in some hair dryer?
I don't think it'll melt it.
Yeah, that'll.
Oh.
Okay, so here's another way. This would be a two-dimensional. You'd want to put that somewhere and it would be flat. It wouldn't have any kind of direction. I'll show you what I'm talking about right now. So another thing you can do for that outer petal is you first create a base. So you create some height. So the petals are not just flat on the paper. And then on top of that,
Seems like it would be easier to lift off if you did have a base.
well, it's gonna be hard by the time you get it out off of there, so that's not necessarily the issue, but it'll create more of a natural look. Yeah. So once that dries, you can put another rose in there and it gives you just a different dimension, a different look to it. And it's always important to take into consideration when you're placing roses and you're building your scapes on your cakes that it's not all flat. I haven't taught that to my students yet. They've just done all flat 2Ds. And now we need to teach them how to build. So what you do is you know where your scape is going to be, you know where your flowers and your stems and all that is going. You need to put some extra buttercream, smooth it out to create some depth, and then so when you're placing things, it's not flat. It actually, you can now pick a direction. You want it to turn this way, do you want it to turn that way, you want it to turn this way, and you have more flexibility about position, which is important because then you have some decorations where all the roses are just flat like this. But it looks so much more interesting when one's this way and one's that way, because it's more natural. You want to try to do a bouquet, you build up the center and then you build up your flowers around it. Now all of them have a different direction and it looks more realistic than a flat bouquet, cake. So you got to think about position and building things up that way.
I have a question. How would you transfer? I know you say that once the actually dries, but how would you transfer it to your cake? I guess all your details. Would you use like scissors or would you use?
They
It's
have,
royal icing, it's gonna be hard, so you're not gonna.
but they have the scissors for it though.
Oh,
That's for buttercream. If you're doing buttercream roses,
Yes.
you have scissors that have an offset to them so that you can go
Yeah.
underneath them, but you still need to build up a mound of icing
yes.
so that when you go onto the cake with the rose, you're pressing into that mound to anchor it, and then you're pulling it away without actually getting to the decorated part of the cake.
Because I was thinking, I thought royal icing and buttercream were the same technique wise when it came to like. That's what I was asking.
When you talk about like dimensions and stuff, could you double that bottom circle and then put the petals to make it even higher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
That's what I was
absolutely. And you can, if you make it high enough, you can sneak some really little ones in there so
Right.
that you can't even see.
That- oh, no,
the
right.
base.
One more question. I don't know, it's a lot of questions, but say if you say you can't build a mound, but you still want to give the effect of like a little more offering, like when you want to put like a little level right here, so when they dry, it kind of builds like a height to it, or
A level.
like you
Like
have chocolate flowers.
putting them
Yeah.
to dry like this?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that too.
Okay.
Mhm, You can do that. This was like in the- It's really, once you've learned to do this with that base, you can do that with daisies. Just do a small base because you don't want it to show. You can do that with the primrose, so you don't have just a flat blossom, you have something that's got some dimension to it. And this is all work that you can get done ahead, and once it dries, it's really easy to put onto your cake. But some people don't like royal icing, some people want buttercream, and that's still doable. You can do all of this still and do it in buttercream, but what you do is you put everything into the freezer. You put all your flowers into the freezer, and when they're hard, you work quickly, and you have to have a really good plan as to where everything's going before they start to soften up. And you can create some beautiful designs, all buttercream. So when it all thaws out, everything is sliceable, everything cuts through, nothing gets hard, and it's beautiful. So there's a lot of things you can do, even with buttercream, but you just need to make sure you freeze them before you apply them.
Layout.
Underneath them. Okay?
Well, that makes sense. Let's step out for a second.
Just telling them about the rings and
Oh, okay.
about that. So
Yeah,
once these are
buttercream.
dry, you can try it and see how that works, so you can see what that looks like.
Oh, okay.
But that's all the flowers.
Just one quick question. Can you please